everyone. It's Saturday, which means it's time for yet another Salty Saturday morning. I am your host, Mr. Kadish. Yes, Mr. And with me today is our fantastic panel of nerds. We got a very exciting group here today, starting with the man, the myth, the legend himself, Robert Meyer Burnett is joining us.
Hello there. Thank you for inviting me, and I apologize. Somebody who's in the chat going, "This is a record for being late." I take full responsibility for that, and I apologize to all the viewers.
It was only 8 minutes. It's fine. But Robert, you have recently broken away from Mr. Campia and are revitalizing the Burn Network. Really exciting stuff on there. And you've been doing some excellent work with talking about Star Trek. I can't wait to get your thoughts on that in today's episode.
Well,
where can people find the Burn Network?
The Burn Network is on YouTube. And I don't know if making a Burn Network was the smartest thing to do as far as YouTube analytics go. But in addition to myself, there's other creators putting great shows like Architects of Imagination, where some of the greatest video game developers who ever worked in the business over the last 25 years are being interviewed by DJ, the host. And it's one of my favorite shows on YouTube, and it's on my own channel. I don't do it, but I watch it. I wish more people did. And it's fun. It's fun to have other people come on the channel and create. King Tannic does a great anime show. So I've made a YouTube channel that I can rant and rave about Star Trek and how much I can't stand modern Star Trek and how modern Star Trek exemplifies everything wrong with America every hour it's on. And I think it's, from a metaphoric standpoint, but then I can watch other shows on my channel that reinvigorate me.
Yes.
That nice I'm not doing.
Balance. Yes. And we're going to talk a lot about Star Trek today, but before we get into that, the Allfather himself, Odin from OMB Reviews, back with us with a freshly repaired shelf in the background.
Yes, nice. It is back. The fall of Hollywood, which led to the hilarious collapsing of the shelf live on FNT, is back. The movies are not in any order, unfortunately, yet. I was able to scan them, so I hope to get those done before school starts back up in a couple weeks. But yeah, good to be back as always.
Well, I'm sure you're happy about your shelf, more so than you were about pineapple on pizza, but we all can't be right all the time.
Gee, thanks.
And joining us all the way from across the pond, the man himself, Dave Cullen, the most influential man in Ireland and Star Trek aficionado. Thank you for being on the show today, Dave.
Thank you for having me. I'm sorry it took this long, but I have to be honest with you, Matthew. I'm not seeing a jar of corks, vinyl bricks, or a fancy band slide, and I'm a little disappointed. So I'll have to go. I'm sorry. Thank you for having me. Take care. Bye-bye.
Well, Mangold assassinated our jar of corks, unfortunately, and he's tried to take down our studio multiple times by hiring ne'er-do-wells to break in and steal all of our equipment, but we persevere.
That's what it was.
Yes, exactly.
You do what you can.
We do. And he is our shield against everything cancel culture. He's here. He's queer. He's Brian from the Popcast. How you doing, buddy?
Great, except for I was canceled. So I don't know if my shield is working correctly. I think I even reached out to YouTube and said, me and my partner. I did do that. I wasn't referring to it in that sense, but I think they took it that way. Yeah, we were demonetized recently, and that's always fun. But it's great to be here. And I'm glad to see Rob again. I haven't seen him for like 5 weeks now.
I know. I miss seeing you guys. We had our standing date every Monday.
Right, but then the strike happened, and all of our standing appointments for Mondays were all stopped.
Obliterated.
They all canceled. Yeah, obliterated. Although we got nice emails saying, sorry, we won't be able to do it. I don't know if you really wanted to do it, but I appreciate that you can't do it now. So hopefully that comes back when the strikes are over, if they ever are over.
And if YouTube is listening, Brian is Latinx, so you are discriminating against the minority by demonetizing him.
Non-binary Latinx, how dare you?
Exactly. He checks all the boxes, YouTube.
All of them.
Get him back on your money train. Matt Vader 74. Hi. Last but not least, how you doing, buddy?
Last but not least, very excited about this panel. Dave and Robert here today. It's pretty wild. If I have to disappear a little bit, I apologize in advance. I'm waiting on a very important phone call from my operative deep inside Lucasfilm about the fate of KK. Okay, I just need everybody to understand that if I disappear, that's why. Wow. So I told him, I need pictures. I need box going out the door to her car from her office, or nothing else is going to be good enough. So
Wow.
Does your source happen to wear a mask and come and live at the center of the earth?
I can't tell you. I can't tell you anything.
We need
else
to talk about
my source.
KK.
Is he a cosplayer by chance?
I call him Jar Jar. That's his code. That's his code word.
Does he have a high-pitched sidekick creature?
I can't say anything more.
Okay.
Can't say anything more. So,
All right, real quick, just want to give a shout out to everyone who has joined us in the chat. Anthony Mark coming at us from the beach, probably. I think that's what he said. We got Danny's mom, Penny. We have Just Rosie 5, Cocho Dragon, Danny the Dork Knight. I almost said Dark Knight. Heaven forbid.
that would be way too cool for him.
Yeah.
Way too cool.
We've got Marks 47. We got Dawn Ranger Power. Gavin Blackburn is finally unbanned from the channel. I don't know how that happened, but we were able to get him reinstated. The
Nice
Joker's
work.
Voice is here. Thrasher 613, Mark Davis, Whiskey Jack. Let's see here. Who else do we got? We got REK Films Montana and lots of other people in the chat. Thank you all so much for being here this morning. Really appreciate it. We're going to get to your super chats in just a second, along with our members' comments. But before we do, we need to give a shout out to all of our biggest supporters, including the $100 club. So Scotty Dub is still undefeated with his $500 super chats. Then we got Bob Dorsey and the Astro Nerd Boy. We thank you all so much for the support. We have our loyalist Joker Voice and Mexican Iron Man, our most consistent donators. Thank you all so much for that. And Backyard TARDIS and JT Gunn as our top super thankers. And Astro Nerd Boy has been giving them a run for their money lately because he's been dropping a lot of super thanks as well. But our top contributor is Scotty Dove. Scotty, we appreciate you very, very much. Now let's get to the super chats, and then we'll get started talking about all types of fun stuff. Our first super chat is a super sticker for 99 pence from Gavin Blackburn, our super sticker extraordinaire. Thank you, Gavin. Really appreciate that. Then we got one of our loyalists, Mexican Iron Man, for $19.99. Another super sticker.
What's up?
Yes.
That's a heck of a sticker.
Yes, one of the best YouTubers on the platform, I might add.
Yeah, probably the best YouTuber on the platform. I don't know
The
if you guys haven't seen him at Mexican Iron Man.
Yeah,
I just want to say that Mexican Iron Man gifted me with one of my favorite things I own. This is a special modified die-cast hot toy, Mexican Iron Man, that even talks in a voice that you might recognize. I'm not kidding.
Pretty awesome.
Nice.
It's very awesome.
But did he take you to lunch and try to get you drunk and have his way with you?
He did.
Oh,
Yes,
he did?
Yes, he has.
I feel used, Mike.
and Mike plied me with liquor and good food. And I'm happy to be his bitch.
Yeah, same here. I love that man.
All right, we got another super sticker from Gavin Blackburn. Thank you, sir. And JT Gunn, Late Night with Cap for $2. Hey, everybody. Happy Salty Saturday. Happy Salty Saturday to you, sir. And the Joker's Voice for $10. Hail S&P and chat, Mr. Cullen. Love your work. RMB, pleasure meeting you not too long ago. Star Trek, don't care. Seeing Oppenheimer later today, and Barbie is evil. Hashtag keep talking. And finally, the Dork Knight for $2. Vader, acknowledge me.
No, I can't.
Acknowledge me.
Sorry, I'm not doing it. Can't.
Not too late.
I'm
I
not
was really
acknowledging
mad there was
anything.
no sexy Asian Barbie. That pissed me off, man.
I need more than $2 to acknowledge him. Just saying.
Acknowledge me.
Got to drop a hundo if you want Vader to acknowledge you. All right, guys. So enough housekeeping. Thank you all so much for being here. Real quick, want to let everyone know that our sub goal for today's stream is 5 new members. We've already got some members in the chat, but if we can get 5 new subs during this live stream, we will consider that a success.
Really
all right,
quick,
guys.
Hold on. I got Danny's mom sticking up for him now. Play nice, Matt. Play nice. So it's all good. Just saying.
Vader never plays nice. I speak
don't
from
play nice.
experience. Yeah.
It's so surreal seeing Danny and Penny on. They're awesome people, but it's hilarious. Like Penny is on almost all these streams all the time.
Yep.
And I've never, like, my mom doesn't even know I have a YouTube channel.
No, mine either.
My mom doesn't know what a live stream is. Yes.
Right.
All right, guys. So we're going to start off the show with a little bit of a interesting topic. Basically, Grace Randolph loves Barbie, gave it her full feminist endorsement.
The kiss of death.
And yes, the kiss of death. and basically blew up this Barbie Goes Woke story left and right. So for those of you who don't know who Grace Randolph is, she is James Gunn's favorite entertainment news reporter. She has 100% accuracy on everything she reports.
Everything.
100% accuracy of being wrong usually. But she came out recently. She said she saw the Barbie movie and it was wonderfully feminist, and she loved every minute of it. And basically, a lot of people have been saying that Barbie has been a bait and switch, where it was marketed as a fun comedy for all ages, but it's really a serious third-wave feminist film that basically paints men in an evil light, has Ken trying to enforce the patriarchy in Barbie land, and Barbie's fight to save her feminist ideals. Now, I think out of all the people on the panel, Odin's probably the only one who's seen this movie. So, Odin, can you give us a breakdown of what the movie's actually about?
Oh, that's a great question, because the biggest issue I have with the film overall is because it doesn't really know, or at least it doesn't seem to know, who its audience is. Because there's moments in the film where I think, oh, this could definitely appeal to younger female generations. There's moments in the film where I'm like, oh, this could appeal to the generations of people who have grown up with Barbie for many, many years. But then, unfortunately, there are too many moments in the movie where it's, oh, this could only ever appeal to either gender studies majors or their professors. And so it's like, it's because it kind of is going in all these different directions, and it doesn't really know exactly who it wants to be for, that it really, like, narratively is kind of a bit of a mess in that way. But generally speaking, the main concept of the film is that Barbie starts to have feelings and thoughts of death, finds out that there is this connection she has with the real world, and so she has to leave the real world to find out what exactly that connection is, and to be able to try to fix things. And through the course of that, Ken comes with her. Ken then discovers books on the patriarchy, brings those back to Barbie Land, and again, that's pretty much where, like, the main antagonist of the movie essentially is Ken, because he has implemented the patriarchy in Barbie Land. And so again, on the surface, you're like, okay, I could actually see how that could potentially be fun, how that could potentially be funny, right, in that self-deprecating kind of way. The unfortunate thing is that it's coming across in a very clear, I'm giving you a speech. I'm going to pontificate to you about all of these different ideals that really only belong in a college classroom. And even there, you're like, I don't know necessarily if they really belong there, but it is what it is. But a lot of people have been coming out of it very happy, I would say, right? And it's like a 70. Some of the numbers I've seen is ranging from 61 to 70+% of the audience has been female, which makes a lot of sense, right? This is clearly much more for female audiences. But also, too, the general mindset is I've seen mostly positive reviews coming from a lot of the people that have actually seen the movie itself, even if they are willing to admit that there are these moments in the film. So it is kind of interesting to see how some people are a little bit more, I guess, aware of how blatant it is, because it's very, very blatant, and also how many are kind of just, oblivious to it, even when they use the word patriarchy 10 times in the movie.
Robert, what's your take on Barbie? Do you have any Barbies back there on your shelves?
It's funny that you ask that, because I do. I do. I'm looking. Oh, here it is. You'll love this. Here's my Supergirl Barbie from the Flash movie. So,
Very
and
nice.
it's a genuine Barbie, as you can see right there.
Kind of looks, her face kind of looks like that Star Wars girl a little bit, right? It's just
Yes. I mean, well, I have not seen Barbie, but I mean, it's interesting to me that none of it's surprising. I mean, it doesn't surprise me. Noah Baumbach and Greta Gerwig. I think Greta Gerwig, what's more interesting about this movie to me is that I've been a fan of Greta Gerwig's. Like, I really like Lady Bird, as a film with Saoirse Ronan. And I thought that was a really pretty terrific movie. I thought that her Little Women, what we're seeing is a filmmaker that began with very much indie roots. Noah Baumbach obviously has been a very accomplished filmmaker. And they're a couple. And they made this film, and they were given. I find it interesting that they were given. This is not a cheap movie, and it's interesting to see an emerging voice, a new filmmaker, being given the reins to a studio movie. So I look at it from a different perspective. All of the talk about the patriarchy and feminism and making Ken evil, yawn. I mean, I'm a little disappointed that that's where it goes, because to me, that's philosophy 101. It's Gender Studies 101, and it isn't anything unexpected. I would have liked to have seen much more of a Kubrickian satire from all this, but that's a little too much to ask for. And I think that what's more important, what I think when people look back on this movie's made a lot of money this weekend, and so has Oppenheimer. And what I'm curious about is the fact that these two movies have been combined, memed out by social media. It's a marketing campaign the studios could never have figured out or mounted, because you have two films from two different studios that have been grouped together for this sort of pop culture event. Barbie, it turns out Barbie might have the biggest opening of the year, even ahead of Mario Brothers. And Oppenheimer also has way overperformed. And if Barbie has got girls, moms who've gone to see a movie but also wanted to play the game and went and saw Oppenheimer, that to me is a win. Because if people are more aware of who Robert Oppenheimer was and what happened with Trinity and what happened to develop the atomic bomb, which I think, especially in America, people have no understanding of that anymore. So
Right.
I see this whole weekend as something to be celebrated in the sense that I look at the Barbie phenomenon as a way that people have gone to see Nolan's Oppenheimer, and
Sure.
that can only be a good thing.
It's funny, the meme that you're talking about is called Barbieheimer.
Barbenheimer, yeah.
Barbenheimer.
Yeah. So like it's kind of interesting to see that. I wanted to throw this to Dave though. Dave, is Barbie really kind of popular in Ireland as it is over here in America?
I never thought that as a 40-year-old man I would be speaking about Barbie as a topic ever, let alone a movie. I really don't know the answer to these questions, nor had I any plans to ever see any kind of movie about a little girl's doll. So I can't say. But what is staggering and maybe a tad disturbing is I actually wasn't aware what Rob said there about it doing so well at the box office, because it clearly is so monumentally woke with these very divisive political messages. And I suppose my only concern about this is the impact that has on a young generation, because I suppose like we do need positive role models for girls and for boys as well. And instead, typically now what people are getting, and this speaks to all the pop culture that we analyze, is we're just getting stuff that for girls is men are terrible, and you don't have to try very hard. Women are just this Mary Sue. They're held up these representations that are unrealistic, and we've seen that in lots of examples of sci-fi lately. And for men, I mean, I just don't know what there is. And I did a video there on Secret Invasion, and I can't explain to you how much I regret investing any time. I'm not trying to change the subject here, but I just can't talk about Barbie because, but I just cannot fathom how very quickly every major primary protagonist of almost every sci-fi show that or even non-sci-fi, like Indiana Jones, whatever, it's got a borderline sci-fi fantasy, has all gone this sort of Jake Skywalker route, where it's everyone's broken now. All the male characters are broken, and the female characters are held up as being unrealistically perfect. So somewhere in there is my answer to that. But that's my main concern, is that young people are getting these really. Also, the morality of these films as well is really very dubious, the kind of messaging they're receiving. So it's alarming that this film is doing as well as it is, and what that says to America or about America, I don't know.
Well, Brian, as a gender fluid individual, I know you played with Barbies growing up. What's your take on Grace Randolph's take on Barbie?
The Barbies I played with though are like Superman and Batman action figures, a Picard, and I guess a 7 of 9 action figure is technically a Barbie. Grace Randolph is a great barometer right now, and I know I pick on her a lot because she's much bigger than me, and I could do that. And
you're punching.
I'll say that she's a great barometer for whenever she says she likes something, I'm like, oh, cool. I'm not gonna like that.
Yep.
I'm almost positive I'm not gonna like that. When she says something is horrible, I'm like, it's probably based. Let me go check that out. So I've oddly been following her more often lately for the reverse opinion of what I think I should have. And when I saw that, I was actually a little bummed because I thought Barbie might actually be fun. After seeing the trailer, I thought it would be funny. I thought it would be, funny and sort of lighthearted. And I did watch it, and the first half is funny. The last half is real preachy, and it's sort of an odd statement because I saw some of Greta Gerwig, her other stuff like Nurse Jackie and Mindy Project, and like those were all pretty good shows about women as the main character, and they were strong, and they had their weaknesses, but they had their strengths. It was very realistic, and it was funny, and it was a little more lighthearted approach to like social commentary. And I was like, you know what? If she does the same thing with Barbie, then it'll be fun. But it did get really preachy and heavy-handed in the last half of the movie. I don't think it's as bad as people are saying. I'm not trying to put water on anyone's point.
How dare you?
But I don't think it's as bad as people are saying. It's not as preachy as people are saying. It's not like, I saw some guy out there screaming and getting all upset about Barbie as some third-wave feminism. And I'm like, this is not the hill you want to die on, bro. No. It is preachy the last half, but it's not like, don't watch it if you are like really hardcore anti-feminist, because it has that preachy stuff. But it's not like super bad. In fact, I even saw Ken as more of, honestly, I thought Ken was based. I was like, this guy's great. I love Ken. I know he's the villain, which is funny if you just sort of shut it off and if you watch it on streaming, like don't watch like the last like 15 minutes or so, and you're like, great, Ken's awesome. But yeah, that's. I think Grace is a great barometer of things I'm not gonna like. I didn't actually like the film, but I didn't think it was bad. It's not as offensive as people are coming across.
Not for you, Brian. Not for you.
Not for me. Yeah, although, I'm sorry, but whoever said what's her name? Damn it, Barbie. I forgot. Margot Robbie is mid. Is what the f are you talking about? You're insane. She is so gosh darn attractive. If you go watch this movie or you watch it on streaming, you can literally just mute it and just enjoy the visuals. She's gorgeous. Yeah. Whoever said that is either lying, blind, or gay.
And has never seen Wolf of Wall Street.
Right. Oh my God. Wolf of Wall Street. Don't even get me started. Jesus.
So I think we can all agree that Grace Randolph is the Kramer of the entertainment industry.
Hey, Jerry.
Yep. Just whatever she says, it's the opposite. I know that she came out in very staunch support of The Little Mermaid as well.
And attacked Oppenheimer.
And attacked Oppenheimer, yeah. Matt Vader 74, we were going to go see Barbie until you decided to veto that idea.
Yeah, I didn't care if you went and saw it. I just didn't want to go see it.
And you specifically pointed out Grace's tweet endorsing this movie. So what's your take on this?
I mean, it's like Brian said, if Grace supports it, I'm probably not going to like it. I can't stand her. I don't like somebody who just blocks somebody for having opposite opinions on social media. It's ridiculous. She is like everything that is wrong with a YouTube personality. That is Grace Randolph. I can't stand her. But that being said, I can't speak on this movie because I haven't seen it. But I am very curious about what's going to happen to it next week because there's no doubt it's having a big opening weekend. People I have 2 daughters, I have 2 granddaughters, and I have a wife. They all want to go see this movie. That's 3 generations of Barbies. I raised kids. Barbies were everywhere in my house. Heads, messed up hair, legs over here. You know. We had the the ones like Robert has, the collector's ones with the fancy wedding dresses and everything on shelves.
They made great
Barbie-
Star Trek Barbies.
Yeah.
I gotta be honest. I made
Barbie-
Barbies have sex with each other when I was in
yeah.
teens.
Barbie is a huge iconic thing, and I am absolutely not surprised that it's having a absolute huge opening weekend for this movie. It makes total sense. The real story will be next weekend, I think, when people like my wife takes our daughters, you know, and they go and watch this movie, and my wife's going to come back annoyed because it's just a bunch of preachy nonsense. So why can't they just make, my wife's going to go, why can't they just make a fun Barbie movie about, you know, Barbie doing Barbie stuff? You know, it's like, and then I'm going to say, because that's Hollywood now, honey. This is the stuff we talk about every week. And
don't take kids to see this movie.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Don't. It's way too sexual.
But and that's the problem, right? It's like they don't know who their audience is. If make a PG-13 Barbie movie or make a G1. Don't convolute it and make it all these different things, because you're just going to send weird messages. But yeah, that's all I really have to say. Grace Randolph is a terrible human being, and this movie's not for me, so I'm not going to go watch it. So there you have it.
All right. Well, real quick, let's get to some super chats before we move on. Bob Dorsey for $20, one of our Saturday superstars. If someone blew up a huge mining space station, wouldn't you need actual proof that something was wrong instead of believing the random hallucinations of just two people?
Is this Trek?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're going to get to Trek in a little bit. Joker's Voice for $2. Two better Barbie movies, Clueless and Legally Blonde.
Sure.
He's not wrong.
Good movies.
With actual feminism and not third wave stuff.
I love Clueless to this
I do
day.
too.
I can't get enough of Brittany Murphy.
And Legally Blonde is
Legal Blonde.
is legitimately a great movie.
Yeah, it is. It's good.
It's really good. Sidebook VR for 5,000. Is that yuan? I don't know what.
I have no idea what
symbol
that is.
I think that's Japanese though. Barbie equals bad. Reverse Pleasantville. Even Pleasantville was a bit too on the nose as propaganda, but still enjoyable. He's not wrong either. All right, guys. So before we get into Star Trek, I want to talk a little bit about The Sound of Freedom, which has been kind of like a sleeper hit that the mainstream media is trying really, really hard not to comment on. So we have this article from the Hollywood Reporter where it says Sound of Freedom crosses 100 million in the U.S. And it's kind of an interesting article because it kind of goes through the path that this movie's taking, where it's slowly rolling out into more and more theaters. It's beat out Indiana Jones and The Dial of Destiny. But just at the end of this article, I don't know if you guys caught this, they had to go and talk about how it's being discussed on QAnon message boards.
Yeah.
I have no idea what QAnon message boards are, but it also says, and Caviezel spoke at a QAnon convention in Las Vegas. Now, Vader, I've never heard of a QAnon convention out here. Have you?
There's no QAnon convention.
Actually, I have heard of something along those lines. I think it was maybe a offshoot that they got in a little, maybe a little small convention room when there was a Republican Trump rally or something.
Oh yeah, so they're talking about like an actual GOP event. That's the
Probably
QAnon event now.
Yeah. I honestly don't know. No, I do believe I have seen stuff in the papers here about QAnon gatherings, but you know, QAnon. I don't even know if that's still a thing. Is that still a thing? I thought it kind of like went away.
I thought it died.
So
I don't know.
yeah, I it's very strange, right?
For the longest time, I thought it was
these
a meme.
people. These people are going to, anytime they want to try to demonize or do anything and brand it as neocon or far right lunacy, they're just going to say QAnon this, QAnon that, and attach it to it. So it is what it is. It's just more.
I just found it
propaganda
interesting
nonsense.
that the Hollywood Reporter just couldn't report on the numbers. It had to kind of throw that in there.
Yeah.
Brian, one of the interesting things about this is that The Flash has made about $107 million domestically at the box office. It's now out on streaming, by the way.
I know.
But this movie, Sound of Freedom, looks like it's going to overtake The Flash's box office numbers. What do you think about that?
I mean, listen, I like Sound of Freedom. I saw it July 3rd, the day before the opening. My wife managed to get tickets. She was really into it. She loves Jim Caviezel. and
Caviezel.
she's very religious. I mean, he's an attractive man, and
Jesus.
and he's Jesus. Right. So she's religious. He's attractive. It's like a win-win. No, but she got tickets for the day before, so we saw it on July 3rd at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I thought it was great. It was a great movie. I think it was really well done. I thought it had a great message, and you can't really knock the message. In fact, whoever is out there thinking this is a controversial take, like protect kids, like someone needs to investigate that guy's internet browser history. Look at the whole message of this movie is not some QAnon conspiracy. It's actually based on a true story, and the only message, there's no politics here. There's no right. There's no left. There's no sideways or whatever you want to call it. There's one message: kids aren't for sale. And if you disagree with that message, fuck you. That's all I gotta say about that. When it comes to The Flash, I'm bummed out because I like The Flash like a lot. I like the movie. I ain't there's some problems, there's some graphical issues or whatever.
What's wrong with you?
Look, the CGI is off, but I like the movie. I did. I liked the movie
too. Yeah,
I saw it on streaming again, and I was like, this movie's great. I don't know why people don't like it. I don't know why anyone watched it. Maybe that's why I'm being canceled on YouTube, because I liked The Flash.
That's it.
I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on. Sound of Freedom deserves the success it's getting. It's a good movie with a great message, and yeah, God's children are not for sale. Period. The end. But when it comes to The Flash, I don't see a problem with that movie either. It was a fun movie. There's no political messaging. There's no weird check box checking. It's just a great movie.
Well, one of the weird aspects of The Flash is that you have the leading man, Ezra Miller, who's been accused of grooming young women.
That's the problem. The actual actor's nuts.
He's going up against a movie that's about rescuing children from people like that.
Right. Good point. Good point.
Odin, I want to throw this to you because The Sound of Freedom cost $14 million to make, and it's made over $100 million compared to stuff like The Flash and Indiana Jones, which are upwards of $300 million. So this is a hugely profitable movie, even if it doesn't like beat out the box offices of like Barbie or Oppenheimer, or like whatever. They've probably made more money off of The Sound of Freedom than any of the studios have off of their big releases. What's your take on that?
Oh, it's absolutely fact, because the production budget when it was originally made about 5-6 years ago was about $14.5 million. But I believe the amount that was actually paid by Angel Studios, who did not make the movie, they bought the rights to distribute it. I think they only paid about $5 million. Yeah. So you think about that, and ultimately for Angel Studios, it is just complete return on investment, because they paid that $5 million to get the rights, and then they probably paid money for marketing. So you're looking at them probably looking at around a $90 million plus take at this point as far as net profits are concerned, and it's just going to continue to make more money. And what's amazing about it all is that you were mentioning before about the other movies. Well, the numbers just updated, and Sound of Freedom now does indeed officially have a higher domestic than The Flash, 110 versus 107. Nice. And with $110 million after being out for just a couple weeks, you have a chance where this film could potentially beat out even Elemental's domestic of 133, and maybe a little farther shot, but hey, still possible, could end up beating Dial of Destiny's 154 million domestic.
That's awesome. That Jen Schlemazel guy is quite the draw.
Exactly, that's how Brian said. Yeah. But Caviezel's great.
I can't say his name.
Yeah, Caviezel's great, and he's been really good in promoting it. But that article you mentioned, like one of the things that drives me crazy about how the media is covering this is that you have both the overt and also the subversive attacking of this movie, right? The overt stuff is when you have the mentioning of QAnon adjacent, right? This has become now a term. It's like, well, not necessarily directly connected with QAnon, but a QAnon adjacent, because it happens to talk about some of the things that are actually true versus, anything else that was mentioned. But you then also have that byline or that subtitle that was on that article. And how did it describe the movie? Faith-based. That is a subversive tactic, because a lot of people, when they hear the term faith-based movie or religious movie or anything like that, they immediately will shut off to it. Because I know for me, I typically don't like faith-based movies
because they're bad, bro.
They're usually not very good, right?
Yeah,
so a lot of people
have really bad.
a lot of people have the perception that this movie was made by Angel Studios, was, completely made as a faith-based movie, right? God's children are for sale. The fact that just God is mentioned all of a sudden somehow makes this a crazy Christian right-wing movie. And it's like, that's actually not. It was made by 20th Century Fox back when it existed. And then it was put on ice by them in Disney before Angel Studios bought the rights to it. So again, it's doing phenomenally well. It's going to make massive return on its investment. It already has. And they've already talked about how they want to make more movies about the things that Tim Ballard had to deal with. So again, which also could be both a good thing and bad thing. Good because it continues to expose this stuff. Bad in that this would then be Angel Studios putting their full force behind it versus it being another studio making it. So who knows exactly what that would mean for it in the long run as far as its quality. I imagine it would still be really good. But yeah, it's very, very good right now for Sound of Freedom.
All right. Before we get to Rob's take on this, I want to throw this to Dave because he's over in Ireland. Dave, have you heard much about Sound of Freedom over there?
Well, there's 2 points I want to make before. The first thing is on the subject of faith-based films. There was one I only recently saw, and it doesn't matter whether you're religious or not. It's just a really good story. Whatever way you want to look at it, it's a film that was made in 2016. It's called Risen, and it is considered an unofficial sequel to Passion of the Christ, and it stars Joseph Fiennes as a Roman soldier who's tasked with investigating where the body of Jesus has gone from the tomb. And it's actually it's a really good movie. It's well worth it, especially if you're looking to have your faith restored. But it's a beautifully shot film, beautifully acted. I'd well recommend it whether you're a religious person or not. But yeah, so yeah, I mean it's a big story here as well, Sound of Freedom. But actually, there was something else that you talked there about subversive elements surrounding this story, and there was something that I did want to address. So on Twitter, in certain circles, there has been this screenshot that's been going around about something that it's claimed that Tim Ballard said, but I have found absolutely no evidence of this whatsoever. And it's again, I suppose, adjacent to the QAnon conspiracy type thing, which is that apparently this guy said, this is the claim, that he was thinking that microchipping children was a good idea. Okay. Now, people have shared this screenshot around, and having looked into it, there is absolutely no evidence that he said this. At least I cannot find the original source for this screenshot. So what I say to people as well, like, there can be subversive elements on both sides that want to discredit things and everything. So sorry if you're hearing a squeak in the background, that's my dog looking to get out, and it's raining. And oh, by the way, he was hit by a car a week and a half ago.
Oh no.
He's an absolute unit, so he didn't even break a bone, but that was very, very traumatizing.
He broke the car?
Yeah, I think he broke the car more than anything. But he wants to get out, and it's raining right now, and he's got cuts on his feet, so I have to be very careful.
He wants to go smash some more cars.
So if I have to run out, just look out.
Was it one of those weird European like eco cars, the go-karts?
Yeah, no, he's sorry about this. I'm getting very distracted here. So, but yeah, that was my take on it. Sorry.
All right, so Rob, I wanted to ask you, like, you're in the heart of Hollywood out there. What's the buzz around town that you've been hearing about this movie, and what do you think are the implications for like smaller budget films because of this one? Because the studios have been doubling down on like their budgets, 300 million, like productions, and this one $14 million, and it's making over 100.
Well, I have so many thoughts about this. First of all, I went and saw Sound of Freedom. It's a good movie. Especially there's exploitation elements about it. It feels like something it's one step away from being a movie like James Glickenhaus might have directed in 1980, something like The Exterminator or The Soldier. Tim Ballard is a controversial figure in Utah, where he has his foundation, how he raises money, like all people like this, and his exploits come under scrutiny, and so he's already a divisive figure. Then you have Jim Caviezel, who played Christ in Passion of the Christ and Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ, and he has been a very outspoken QAnon supporter of those beliefs. So there's all these things that are swirling around this movie that really aren't the movie itself. And if you go in and watch the movie itself, I think it's a very effective movie. There's a reason 20th Century Fox made it. There's another horror film called The Empty Man that was directed by Dave Pryor that almost got shelved as well, but Pryor basically said no and was able to finish The Empty Man, although you can't, which is a great horror movie, and you can't get it. So it was The Sound of Freedom was a casualty of the Disney Fox merger that was able to get out. And by the way, I find Angel Studios to be an interesting player in Hollywood. They have a movie coming out called The Shift. Now, it's clearly by their name, they're a quote unquote faith-based company, but The Shift looks really interesting to me. I'm like kind of a horror science fiction hybrid, very multiple universes. I saw this trailer. I'm like, this looks like kind of like the Adjustment Bureau by way of the Devil's Advocate or something. I don't know. I'm like, I'll watch that. But here's the thing about, I'm a Jew. I grew up watching faith-based movies. Ben-Hur, The Ten Commandments, The Robe. I mean, half the Hollywood epics that came out in the 50s when we went over to widescreen to combat television were faith-based. I have never had a problem with faith-based movies that are even about religions that I own Risen on Blu-ray. I have no problem with faith-based films. What I have a problem with are movies that aren't good. And the problem is a lot of these faith-based companies, they want to compete with what they see as the amorality in Hollywood. So they want to offer their audiences an alternative. Kirk Cameron has been in a lot of these movies, even Nicolas Cage, like The Left Behind. I thought the Left Behind book series could make a pretty compelling series of movies, or they just haven't been able to do it very well. So I don't have a problem with a faith-based movie from just like I would love to see, like I'm obsessed one day. I would even love to make a movie based on the book of Job because I've always loved the story of Job. Oh my
God, that would be amazing.
It would be amazing.
That would almost be a comedy, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, Robert Heinlein wrote a book called Job, a comedy of justice, I think he called it.
A dramatic, tragic comedy. That would be
a satire, modern, right. and I
with his nagging wife in the background. The only thing left for him was his wife that wouldn't shut up, wouldn't stop talking.
Yeah, it would be. And I love, look, all of Western civilization, all of Judeo-Christian culture, and they come from the Abrahamic and Islamic culture comes from the Abrahamic religions. I mean, so if to have an understanding of literature and Western civilization, you should know your scripture. So I have no problem with faith-based movies. This film is dealing with the subject matter almost in an exploitation film kind of a way. Who doesn't want to go save kids? And if Tim Ballard talked about even microchipping kids, the problem is someone's like, does he mean like the number of the beast?
Oh,
look,
gosh,
we microchip I have 3 dogs. They're all microchipped. If they run away, it's so you can find them again. And this idea of if children are microchipped and they're trafficked, you could find them. So it wouldn't surprise me that Tim Ballard made this comment because having a military background, why not? Surveillance. It doesn't necessarily mean he's talking about, it's the evils of whatever. He's thinking about, well, if kids are kidnapped and we had a way of finding them.
Yeah, he's just trying to think of the best way to stop the problem. That's
the thing that I don't like is that everybody is disingenuous. Everybody on both sides are constantly trying to curry favor. And the fact of the matter is Sound of Freedom a good movie? And I think the answer is, well, yes. Now, there might be social pressures and factors that are feeding into its success. And certainly Angel Studios has played that up because they've turned a $5 million investment into a $100 million grossing film. This is by the way, from a profitability standpoint, a movie like Sound of Freedom in its current state might actually make more profit than a movie that cost $200 million that grossed $1 billion in terms of its actual profitability, in terms of percentages, because films today are way too expensive. The studios, the reason that our streamers are ailing is because a show like Citadel costs $300 million because it's reshot. People don't know what they're doing. They don't know how. Movie making has been the same for 100 years. Nowadays, the people that are making things and the people at the studio level are probably lesser qualified than they've ever been in terms of making these things and understanding how to oversee the making of these things. And it's really frustrating. It's really frustrating to see it's killing the industry, all this profligate spending because, we'll have 1,000 VFX artists. We'll fix it all. We'll shoot it all on green screen stages. Well, all that means you're going to jack up the price in post. And with the log jams and the effects companies, the industry is in a terrible state because the people that are working in the industry for the most part are not as experienced as they should be. I mean, I'll tell you something. There's nothing better than seeing a film crew at work, because nobody can solve problems faster than an actual team on the ground making a movie, because every second has a dollar value associated with it. I know I'm kind of rambling, but Sound of Freedom did what all movies should do that are successful. They connected with their audience. They may be a product of their time, but the fact is, as Brian said, you go to this movie, it's entertaining. It has a message that kids are not for sale. You walk out of that movie thinking you've seen something important. It makes you feel better about yourself and about the world we live in, that there are people like, maybe he's the fictionalized version of Tim Ballard, but that there are people out there fighting the good fight. And that's what movies have done for 100 years. And that's why it's making money.
Yeah, just actually on that point, I probably should have looked this up earlier, but just a little while ago, the Western Standard, which I've posted this link in the chat there, westernstandard.news has an article, Sound of Freedom's Ballard denounces microchipping children. So this is addressing what we've just brought up, this screenshot that's been going around on social media. The real-life main character of Sound of Freedom has taken to social media to dispel allegations his movie is part of an agenda to microchip children. It will never cease to amaze me how far the godless leftist media will go to run interference for human traffickers. They're throwing everything at me now. Tim Ballard, star of the movie about child sex trafficking, said in a recent Instagram post. He said, I just saw a post that seems to be trending in certain places saying that I'm in favor of putting microchips in children so we can track them. It's complete baloney. So I don't know whether you want to put that up there or not.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, there you go.
Yep. Real quick, we got a super chat from T Stoney for $10. Angel Studios is doing great with in-house productions. The Chosen is a great show, whether you are Christian or not. Dave is right on Risen too. I'm gonna have to check Risen out.
People love The Chosen. I've not watched it myself, but I've heard a lot of people in the industry and out of the industry say it's a good show.
I tried. It's just too boring for me.
Well, I mean, it's weird to me that, like, we are the very basis of our culture is Judeo-Christian, and the Bible is full of amazing stories. So that's true. I have no problem. Like I said, I'm obsessed with one day doing a movie about the Book of Job. I don't understand why there's this weird, I mean, I guess I do understand. It's all part of the same political divides that we have everywhere. But I mean, some of the great Hollywood films like Ben-Hur, which I love. I've seen it in 70 millimeter. It's a faith-based movie. You know, Let My People Go. Come on. What's wrong with that? Yeah. Would you want to give up Charlton Heston parting the Red Sea in the 10 Commandments? I wouldn't.
Yeah, and you could also argue, like someone in the chat said earlier, that Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade are both faith-based movies.
Sure.
They're totally faith-based.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to give a big shout out to Leanne Jones for joining our membership. That means we got 4 more to go to hit our goal.
No, actually, I also want to interject. JT gifted 5 subs about 10 minutes ago. That
JT
so,
Gunn.
Thank you, JT.
Thank you, JT Gunn. Late Night with Cap.
Guys, such a match.
Yes. Okay, guys. So we've talked about a couple topics, but let's get to the real meat and potatoes of today's show, which is, should Paramount sell Star Trek? Now, I want to lead this off by talking a little bit about the big Disney news that has been going on there. And if anyone out there watches Dub's channel, WDW Pro, he has been covering this like white on rice. Like, he is just on top of this stuff. It is very detailed. He has a great channel. Go check him out. But basically, the long and short of this is that Disney, in an effort to figure out how to actually stem the bleeding of their financials, is going to be selling off some of their TV properties. So it looks like ABC's on the block. FX, certain parts of ESPN, et cetera. And basically, there's a big rumor going out around there that Disney as a whole might actually be sold to Apple. And in addition to that, like, that just kind of sets the stage, because Disney, like, is such a big company. I think Apple is worth like trillions of dollars as opposed to billions. So like, if they were to absorb them, they would get, you know, their whole library, they would get their parks, they would get all that stuff. And but I don't know if that's actually the case. That's just a rumor. But what is not a rumor is that they are going to be selling off certain TV divisions. And that brings us over to Paramount. And their parent company, which I believe is, I'm blanking on it right now, but Paramount Global, used to be Viacom. Basically, they're so strapped for cash that they are slashing their dividend. They're putting their publishing house up for sale, Simon & Schuster. And they're also firing a bunch of people as a more disciplined approach to their spending. And a lot of people are asking, like, what impact does this have with Star Trek? And already we've seen a couple of Star Trek shows get canceled. The last season of Picard, basically they had been on record as saying, oh, we'll keep doing season of Picard as long as Patrick Stewart wants to do it. But they capped it off at 3 because it's a $100 million TV show per season. And then you had the Star Trek Prodigy also kind of like go the way of the dodo. So the question here is that at what point would it make sense for Paramount to actually sell off the Star Trek franchise and basically cash out on it one last time in order to kind of like take this austerity measure? Robert, I'd like to throw this to you to begin with. What's your take on it?
Well, I mean, look, I think that like so many other things, the entertainment business is going through a massive sea change that I think YouTube, TikTok, so much of the way people, especially younger audiences, are getting entertained has completely changed. I've often said that movies and to a certain extent television were the art form of the 20th century. That has changed in the 21st century. Movies do not have the resonance. When I was a little kid, I was movie mad. We didn't have photorealistic video games. We had movies. Now things have completely changed. Mm-hmm. And young people will go to movies. I mean, I've watched 2 teenage girls grow up. They could care less about films. They'll go to them and like them, but they have no resonance. There's other things they would rather do. And I would assume the same is probably true of teenage boys. I mean, they'll go see a Marvel movie, but they'd much rather be playing Ghost of Tsushima or being online doing something else. So that was something that no one anticipated. Everybody is holding on to these old business models. Now, when it comes to Star Trek, the thing about Star Trek is only as good as does it reflect the culture that the audience is living through. In the 1960s, we're arguably in one of the most tumultuous periods of modern American history. We were not in the middle of World War II, but you had civil rights, you had Vietnam, you had the assassination of John F. Kennedy, of Martin Luther King, of Bobby Kennedy. The kids were being drafted, and the country was tearing itself apart. And you had a show like Star Trek that was incredibly optimistic and incredibly smart. A show that was saying that there is a future, we will solve our problems, and humanity will be enlightened as we move out amongst the stars. And we will take what we've learned here on Earth with us to help the rest of the universe get better. That's what Star Trek was about. It was aspirational, and it was about where we could aspire to one day be. The problem with modern Star Trek is it is trying to be a reflection of where we are now. Mm-hmm. And this is a mistake, because there's this weird impulse in all of entertainment. Everybody wants to see themselves reflected in the entertainment they watch. Yeah. This is completely not what Star Trek is all about. Star Trek is not here to reaffirm you today. Star Trek is here to offer you a vision of what we could all maybe be. Something we will eventually evolve into. People that we aspire to, that we'd love to become. When I was a kid, I didn't expect to see myself in Star Trek. I looked at Kirk, Spock, and McCoy as people that I would hope to one day grow into. Nowadays, all entertainment everybody wants to see themselves reflected back. And because that's where we're at. Social media has turned everybody into, we're all narcissistic, navel-gazing people that we can program our input to only be stuff that we want, which is really weird, because it used to be that you had to look outward and see things that you didn't know that you wanted. That's what we discovered through entertainment. That's what we discovered through literature. Like, my God, here is a different, better way to live. Now all anybody wants is to have their own ways of living reaffirmed. Mm-hmm. They don't have to aspire to things. You're okay the way you are. You're okay. No, you're not. No, you're not. Our civilization is crumbling because we have lost the aspirational impulse to do better. And doing better is hard. It's hard work. It requires dedication, years sometimes. And that's what Star Trek used to be about. Now you watch Star Trek and it sounds like I'm at the bridge is my local Starbucks. People talk to each other the way you hear. I mean, it's so gross. It's so gross the way the bridge crew of the Enterprise under Pike is written. I'm like, who are these people? Why are they talking? Why are they making the smartest man on the ship the butt of jokes?
Or Rob, to that point, forgive my interruption.
Yeah, please.
So this is now an iconic line of dialogue from the character of Spock, and we can all think of great Spock lines down the years, but I'm just going to add this one in here from last week's adventure. Smoky and salty and sweet and soft and crispy all at the same time. I must have more. So
I think we can all aspire to eat bacon. That is our future as
Spock
humanity.
from Star Trek. I mean, I think actually, you know, Rob, you hit the nail on the head there. But there's so much to diagnose the fundamental problem with Star Trek since as far back as 2009, and it's only gotten worse since Discovery came on the scene. But I think, if anything, you could distill down the very issue with modern Star Trek with the treatment, focusing on the treatment of the character of Spock alone, and the total misunderstanding of that character. I think is very illustrative.
You know, if I could just throw out one of the great Spock lines ever is also in one of the most iconic Spock episodes of all time, the first episode of the second season of the original series, Amok Time. I won't go into the plot, but at the end, after everything that happens, Spock says, after a time, you may find that having is not so pleasing a thing, after all, as wanting. It is not logical, but it is often true. One of the great lines of Spock. I would love, since 2009, to hear a writer on Star Trek come up with a line as great as that, but no one ever has.
Here it is. That's the line right there.
Yeah,
It's fantastic writing right there. It's amazing.
But I mean, that's the thing that bothers me, and so often, and I think it really comes down to the fact that, I hate to say it, but you know, the American education system, people don't know classic literature. The people that wrote the original Star Trek were actually writers themselves. They were novelists, short story writers, playwrights. They wrote science fiction. They fought in World War II. Gene Roddenberry was not only an accomplished pilot in World War II, but then he was a speechwriter for the chief of police of Los Angeles. He walked the beat. We don't have that anymore.
Yeah. Also, we don't seem to have like correct filmmaking techniques. There's an extreme lack of establishing shots. There's there's an erroneous amount of scenes that are completely unnecessary. I mean, there's so many scenes that don't drive the story. Go ahead.
I will say, Brian, that to Rob's point, we did have a Pulitzer Prize-winning novelist take care of the first season of Star Trek Picard. So even novelists nowadays are not, all that they're cracked up.
And by the way, one of my favorite writers, he's an incredible writer, but even that is that I think that people forget he wanted to make Star Trek the way he wanted it. And everyone wants to change, to Dave's point too. We have all these writers that want to change these classic mythic structures and make them more that people are saying, nah, you know what? We're not going to do that. Let's postmodern deconstruct our characters anymore, as if heroes somehow are a bad thing. That these aspirational characters are somehow, let's get rid of them. And why? What are you replacing them with? People that are mediocre? And I think maybe it comes down to the fact that we've never lived through hardship. It seems to me like all of the work that we're getting now is written by people from a culture. It is luxury to have the kinds of freedoms and to live in a culture where you don't go for want. We're too complacent, and we just assume that you can just call up Amazon and have everything delivered to you the next day. Well, what's it like when you don't live in that kind of a culture? We're all products of this luxury culture we live in. And unless you don't live in that, can you write real heroes anymore? Does anyone know how to do that?
Yeah,
I
they
don't
need to
think
take a
people do.
Robert McKee seminar once in a while. Let me throw this to Dave Cullen, because Dave has been doing some excellent coverage on Star Trek as well. Dave, what are the problems with modern Star Trek, and do you think Paramount could put it on the chopping block?
Well, they could. That anything's possible. They could. Could they sell it? Will they? Who knows? I mean, they've held on to it for a very, very long time. But I think we all recognize the fact that, Paramount has, and it's actually. I mean, my complaints with Star Trek go back a very long time, to even the late 90s, early 2000s, where I wasn't fully happy with the direction that Voyager had gone in, even the early seasons of Enterprise. I mean, looking back, you go, oh, that was actually great. What was I even complaining about by comparison to where we are now? But, having said that, I always thought something like Voyager was sort of stuck in third gear. It had potential beyond where they were willing to take it, I suppose. But I definitely think, with the cancellation of Enterprise in 2005, it was pretty clear the Paramount did not, and really hasn't fully understood, at least their top brass, I guess, what they have with Star Trek. I mean, if anything, I think they tried, with few exceptions, unsuccessfully, to build a movie spin-off franchise out of Star Trek that seldom worked well. I mean, some of the first 6 films, I think we can all think, 2, 3, 4, 6. One is still my favorite Star Trek film of all of them. I've come to appreciate it more over the years, but it wasn't a massive commercial success at the time. I don't think they ever really understood how to make that work. And I think they thought they just had to sort of be Star Wars. And I think that's why they when they decided to change things and bring in Bad Robot, they said, okay, look, let's just turn this into an action franchise. And it was just, everything about that decision shows how little they really appreciate Gene Roddenberry's vision, or the fact that Star Trek was supposed to be sort of niche. It was never supposed to be mainstream.
Yeah.
When that 2009 film came out, I suddenly heard people speaking favorably of Star Trek that would always look down at it, or laugh at it, or be a little bit smug about it, or think it was this weird sort of, fringe, geeky kind of sci-fi. And I was happy for it to live in that place, because I felt like people like myself had a sort of ownership of it, And then over time, it just, once you make something for a general audience, you naturally have to sort of bring it down to the lowest common denominator. And so the films, there becomes very little difference in terms of action, tone, pacing, dialogue, characterization, theme, and everything else. It was very different. There's no difference between that and a Mission Impossible film, or Fast and Furious film, or a Transformers film, or whatever it is. Suddenly Star Trek was operating in that sort of space. And since then, I think when they brought it back for television, elements of that transformation remained in place. And so 2017, the woke thing was really, I think, maybe into its second year at that point. And it became fairly obvious that, whatever about those first 3 J.J. Abrams films, and I can't say anything terribly positive about them, what they weren't, with the exception of Into Darkness, perhaps, was terribly depressing or dystopian. There's certainly elements about that film I really disliked. But I think that, to Rob's point, when you have people, I mean, it's that meme, I always get this mixed up, but good times create weak men create bad times create strong men, and strong men create good times.
Yeah.
So it's that cycle. And I think it is a case of, you've got a generation of young people who've had the internet, they've had modernity, they've had comfort, they've had materialism, they've had decadence. Their entire world is couched in that. You look back in the 1960s. I've been in a lot of reviews of sci-fi movies from the 1970s,
and they're great, by the way. Your review series is terrific.
I appreciate that. But one of the themes really that's consistent in those 70s movies, which was really the birthplace of the environmental movement, is that there's this complete sea change between the beginning of the 1970s and the end of the 1960s. The Vietnam War and the demoralization of America that followed, and the fact that the kind of hippie movement of love and peace and everything that wasn't enough to create the kind of utopia. It wasn't enough to end the war. And at the end of that, what resulted was a real sense of fear of the future. And Star Trek was one of the few franchises, one of the few consistent science fiction icons that maintained a hopeful and optimistic vision throughout all of those years and all of those decades that followed. And it's funny because there's so much sci-fi today is disturbingly dystopian. And I think it's born out of the fact that when a generation or a couple of generations have not endured significant hardship for long, where do you go? You can't get anything much better other than to deconstruct what's already great about the civilization you're living in. And so all that's happening now is we have this beautiful house, and it's like, the house could be better. So you don't appreciate what you have. You don't appreciate the people who sacrificed to build that house. Right. No. What happens if we just tear the walls down? What happens if we take the roof off? What happens? Well, we won't have a house anymore. And that is the state of the Western world right now. And that indeed is the state of all of the cultural touchstones and institutions, be they political or in terms of science fiction, for example, Star Trek, Star Wars, you name it, Indiana Jones. That's what's happening to all of these things. It's a civilizational decline. It's what my friend John Waters describes as everything is in free fall. And I just see that as illustrative of where Star Trek is right now. It's been going for over 50 years, much like Doctor Who. What are we seeing? The exact same maladies that have befallen all of these shows.
But if I could speak just real quickly, Dave, I couldn't agree with you more. I think another problem with our civilization is over the last, say, 50 years, there's been so much emphasis on people's, say, mental health, and like everybody, life is hard. Being alive is terrifying, and it is messy, it is difficult, it is painful, and we have this society where everybody wants to make everybody feel better all the time. Let's have therapy, let's have mental health. And yes, that is a great thing, but people have to understand that's a luxury item. And nowadays, when you're a hero putting up with, if you're in war or you're out on the final frontier, you don't necessarily have a lot of time to worry about your mental health. You have to step up and make something happen. And I think nowadays people are fearful, or it's like, no, man, you have to take time for yourself. Well, the kinds of changes that happen galactically or happen socially happen quickly and in fits and starts, and they're loud and they're messy and they're explosive. And those are the people in those times that step up to the plate and solve the problems that we need to have solved. Nowadays, I think our culture is so focused on, I need to feel better about myself. Well, when a boulder is rolling down the hill at you, that boulder doesn't care how you feel about yourself. You have to get the hell out of the way or do something about it. And your mental health can come later. And our heroes, the men especially, are being deconstructed because it's like, oh, I feel bad, so I can't function anymore. Let me go to Achito and throw my lightsaber over the back of my shoulder and not worry about it because I can't deal. It's just too hard. This is what we have been reduced to. Well, I got news for you. That attitude is going to lead us right off a cliff.
I think that's actually. Sorry, go ahead.
No, let's ask Robert if he thinks there's going to be an episode with Spock going into a safe space pretty soon. So
I wouldn't be surprised. There are I'll tell you something. There are no safe spaces in the cosmos anywhere.
I mean, Pike has his safe space. It's his kitchen that he doesn't get out of ever through the entire series run. It's, so.
Well, if he didn't get out of the kitchen, how would Spock eat bacon?
I know.
Real quick, we got a new member, 1864 Kev. Welcome to the membership. Really appreciate that. So I want to throw this to Brian. Brian, one of the things that I remember is that back in the 90s when Viacom acquired CBS and therefore acquired the rights to Star Trek and Paramount and stuff like that, there was a concerted effort to crack down on the fan community. Basically, you couldn't write fan fiction anymore. You couldn't do any of the stuff that kept Star Trek alive during the lean years where there were like no movies or TV shows or like whatever. And fans have basically been fighting against Viacom and Paramount and all these draconian legal things, specifically with like fan films and stuff like that, where you have the owners of the IP basically trying to destroy the fan base that's supporting the IP. So in my mind, I think that maybe Star Trek finding a new home at a different studio might actually be healthy for it. What's your take on that?
Yeah, that's never gonna happen though. There was like a lot of rights issues between the TV shows and the movies. That's why the movies were like so much different. Or at least that's the working theory. There's always been like, very interesting things about Star Trek. The fans are very passionate about Star Trek. We love Star Trek. And when there's no Star Trek, fans are usually technical enough just to make their own. And, of course, Viacom didn't like that. Actually, they didn't have a problem with it until Axanar came around. Axanar really, that caused a lot of trouble. In fact, I think he sort of ruined it for everyone else, to be honest. Because he crowdfunded a ton of money and didn't actually do anything with it, which made Star Trek look bad. In fact,
well, we did make Prelude.
Yeah, I'll give this to Robert. Robert knows way more about this. He actually worked on this project.
Well, no, I mean, what was interesting about the Axanar project was you had a lot of impassioned fans that got together, and I worked on this project. So they crowdfunded $100,000 to make a short film called Prelude to Axanar. And it was made. The money was crowdfunded in March. We shot the Prelude in May. I was the editor, post supervisor, given a lot of leeway to take what was shot to turn it into something. And we debuted it at San Diego Comic-Con in 2014 in July. Worked beautifully well. It was fantastic. Everybody worked on it. Christian Gossett, the director, an old friend of mine who'd done things like the comic book The Red Star, worked for Lucas, doing Star Wars comics. It was like a dream. And then we used Axanar to leverage money. Axanar was proof of concept to make a feature film. What happened, like so many other Hollywood stories, is the person whose idea it was, Alec Peters, who had never made a movie before, he decided to get rid of everybody that actually made Prelude. He kept me around, but decided to get rid of everyone. And he was making a ton of money crowdfunding and decided to live off of it. Mm-hmm. The money should have gone right into an escrow account. We should have made Prelude. We should have made the Axanar feature film the way we made Prelude to Axanar. The one difference is that Alec Peters, who was taking in all the money, decided to live off of it. We were trying to build a studio at the same time, but he was not qualified to run a film project. And and to this day, CBS sued us. To this day, he still hasn't been able to finish 2 15-minute short films. And we made the 22-minute Prelude to Axanar, soup to nuts, from March to July. We crowdfunded in March. The film debuted in July of 2014. March, April, May, June, July. Crowdfunded, finished the movie, delivered it in a theater at the San Diego Comic-Con. And since then, Alec Peters hasn't been able to make 2 15-minute shorts.
Yeah, I know Alec personally too. Yeah, and it's crazy. And originally, I thought, this guy is really trying to make something really fresh and new. But when every single update, every single tweet or whatever, every single community post is like, "Hey, now we're out in LA shooting. We're over here shooting now, and then there's gonna be a delay, but then we'll come back and shoot." Like, I don't know how long you need to shoot this thing. Like, for the love of God, it's supposed to be like you're creating 30 minutes of content, or less, I guess less, because the CBS thing, and it's just constantly, I have a family emergency I have to go to. This actor has an emergency. There's always an emergency. Someone's sick, and it just seems like he's constant. To me, it seems like he is dragging his waning fan base along as they continue to support him with money.
Oh, it's just an absolute embarrassment.
Well, right. if I may, on the fan film guidelines thing, because I was really disgusted when they came in. If you read some of them, I don't know, are these still being enforced? I'm not sure. But there's stuff in there, or at least there was at the time when they were written, about how you're not allowed to have any of the actors from any of the original shows in it, which I think is incredibly authoritarian. Like, how could you enforce whether, so this is a private production that's been created between people. You have this private agreement between a person who wants to act in your production. How you're going to keep these people from doing what they want to do? I understand they're not supposed to make any money out of it, although I have very different views on this in the sense that I believe that all of these franchises should be in the public domain at this point. In fact, Star Trek would have been in the public domain a couple of years ago if it wasn't for the fact that, let's not forget that Washington is pay for play, and studios like lots of the ones that we're talking about have consistently lobbied to have copyright laws changed so that they can keep this intellectual property going and continue to milk off of it. But the reality is, if Star Trek was in the public domain, we wouldn't be here talking about it, because there would be no longer any sense of what canon is going forward. But that's true. But there would be industries all over the world. People would be making dozens of Star Trek productions for profit, and lots of people would find themselves gainfully employed.
Right.
Is this not a good thing? But so this is the thing. It's like, I want what's best for Star Trek. And to the original question there about whether Paramount should sell it or not, I just couldn't care about any of these studios anymore, because they didn't create it and they shouldn't have a right to it any longer.
Dave, can I put a period on that trademark thing real quick? The trademark laws are so skewed toward these giant, corporations. It's crazy. You have Mickey Mouse, who will be owned by Disney every single time his trademark is up and he's supposed to be entering the public domain. Literally every single time a law is changed. Somehow they get someone in the government to change laws that allow them to extend a right, or add some sentence somewhere that allows them to continue ownership of this character. Disney is the problem. When it comes to trademark, Disney has ruined the act of derivative art. Look, guys, all art is based on something. You are inspired by someone or something, even if it's a mountain range, or whatever. So it's okay to see something and be inspired by it and create something that you love based on that. But we are in a society now where the idea of public domain, something that was working for a long time, is no longer happening. Companies can own a character for longer than the person who created that character can be alive. Longer than a human can live. And a company can own that character almost in perpetuity. And the way they do it, and the way they've been lobbying the government to continually downplay new emerging artists and almost become gatekeepers in this world of entertainment and art. And Robert's right. TV is, at least for me, TV was always an art form. I love TV so much. And we're in this society now where trademark has been bastardized by corporations to the point where you can own something for longer than a person can be alive. And that is making derivative art, like the famous Campbell soup painting, wouldn't exist in the new trademark laws. These things couldn't exist. And they're using their money and their weight. They throw it around because the legal system is so weird and corrupt when it comes to trademarks that even if what you're doing is completely legal, if they have enough money, they'll just completely shut you down, and you couldn't fight it even if you were completely within your rights to. It's sort of crazy.
Yeah, and actually, Brian, on that point, if the original copyright laws had have remained in place, Star Trek would have fallen into the public domain last year in 2022. So the cage would have been, you would have been able to do what you liked, make your own film about that particular Enterprise, Pike, Spock, those characters, and then later the first season, and so on and so on and so on as the years went on. But here we are.
I just wanted to point out too, if you look at the recently announced Emmy nominations for both dramatic and comedy shows, we are living in a tremendous age of writing when it comes to television. The dramatic shows and the comedy shows, there is some wonderful creation happening by some very smart people who are making some really great entertainment across the board. Diverse entertainment, meaning the different kinds of stories being told, all across the gamut, whether they're fantasy stories, whether they're crime stories, whether they're comedy stories about an elementary school. There's so much great writing happening. You would think that Star Trek would be the Tiffany standard of science fiction on TV. And what's so frustrating is we're getting a dumbed down It's not even family friendly. It's just something that is, I don't know who it's supposed to appeal to. It's definitely lowest common denominator. And I understand there's a lot of Star Trek fans that do like it because it sort of takes the whole pop culture sense memory of what Star Trek has been over the last 57 years and distills it into a confection that I guess goes down easy. But I've always taken, even as a kid, I always took Star Trek very seriously. You know, I learned so many things. I remember as a kid seeing Arena for the first time. And I'll give you an example about why I hate modern Star Trek. Arena was a show that had many different twists and turns in it. When you meet the Gorn, and everybody in pop culture, again, makes fun of the Gorn now. But when you saw the Gorn for the first time, when the Gorn captain is fighting Kirk on this nameless asteroid to the death to save both of their crews, the Gorn captain's using a translator, and the Gorn captain knows he's physically stronger, more imposing. He could take Kirk out very simply. And the Gorn captain says, look, man, I'll be quick and merciful. You're going to die. I have to kill you, but I'll do it quickly and without pain for you. This is what the Gorn captain says, showing the creature has a sense of morality, has a sense of mercy, has a sense of, obviously I admire you, so I will make your death quick and merciful. In Star Trek Strange New Worlds, they've taken the Gorn, turned them into these monstrous creatures that are one part xenomorph and one part slavers. And they've there's a complete lack of understanding. They've taken these characters that were only really shown once in the original series that are shown to be, they have technologically advanced propulsion systems that are faster than the Federation's. They even have a reason why they attacked Cestus 3. Because maybe we had encroached on their space. And in Strange New Worlds, they're like, what can we do to take something that previously existed in Star Trek canon and turn them into stupid black and white adversaries and paint them as the worst possible things of all?
They turned them into the Reavers from Firefly.
It's horrifying. And it shows a fundamental, not just Spock, but a fundamental lack of understanding of what Star Trek is and its very DNA. And that's what's frustrating. When we have all this other great TV in the comedy and drama realms, and we get shitty science fiction. And I wonder, how come nobody is policing that? Why is there not an executive at Paramount going, this is the drivel that you're serving up to us? Shameful. Why are you making such stupid television?
But I think it's the same. Someone was saying this. A friend of mine was saying to me recently about sort of the curse of middle management and how, after a few decades of managing a company, so that the original owners are not involved anymore, obviously, and what you have is the people who have inherited the product, whatever it might be, and in this case, it's Star Trek, and so they're looking for ways they're not maybe creative people themselves. And so they're looking for ways to very cheaply and efficiently and quickly give the appearance to shareholders, whatever, that they have innovated somehow, that they've added something of value and that they have transformed the product into something better, or they've continued its legacy in some way. And here comes these young people with maybe a gender studies degree, and they've come along and they've said, just make it woke, and that appears to be trendy, and that gives the appearance of innovation because you're writing it in a different way. The tone of Star Trek has been modernized. This is the thing I've spoken about recently. It sounds like everybody, just in the reactions of the characters, the expressions on their faces, the way they react, the way they speak, the dialogue is written in this California Valley sort of vernacular, which is so jarring, because if you look at how Star Trek was written, just take the Berman era, for instance, there was a real attempt not to heavily stylize the dialogue. I mean, it's not Shakespeare, but it's been compared to that in the sense that there was an attempt to restrain the dialogue to such a degree that it was not something that you could place, certainly not something that you could place in the 20th or 21st centuries. Right. And so that it would be universal in a way. And that's how it was written. And when aliens spoke, sometimes the aliens could be, very, arch in some cases, you know. They come on the view screen and they speak in that particular way of "I'm going to destroy your ship, Captain." You know, they always had that sort of thing. The makeup might change, but there was an attempt to make them alien. Did you see that episode the other day of Strange New Worlds, which is the one where Kirk, the guy who plays him, I liked his take on Kirk in a sense. I still think he's miscast.
Paul Wesley.
Paul Wesley, right? So he and La'an are on Earth. They're in Canada.
Episode 4, yeah.
Right, and so they meet this spoilers, this Romulan lady who's made to look human. Everything about how she speaks to them and the words she uses, the tone of her voice, the pitch, the cadence, everything is like she's a millennial.
Yeah, she's like a TikToker, right?
Right.
Yeah,
She
yes.
should sound like an alien.
I expect her to have a food blog or an Instagram blog, yeah.
Right. Or YouTube channel, whatever, you know.
Right, or a YouTube channel, right.
So
Why doesn't she have pointy ears?
Yeah.
She's wearing a beanie, a hat, or whatever. Why don't you just give her pointy ears? Why not just you do that for the fans? Give the Romulan chick pointy ears.
Yeah.
Also, just this stagnation of modern art in general has. I think there's a
Dave,
great. Yeah, go ahead,
Dave. That brings me to a point I want to touch on with Matt Vader. So when I got back from my vacation, I told you that it was so nice not having to watch Star Trek in order to talk about it on these streams. And we made the decision from that point on to maybe forego the reviewing of the episode by episode of season 2 of Strange New Worlds. And I think it's just getting worse where it's like watching Star Trek has become a chore because they have systematically broken down everything that was good about Star Trek and just tossed it out the window. What's your take on this new season of Strange New Worlds? And do you agree that it's just been run into the ground?
It's absolutely been running into the ground. My favorite thing to do is to get home from work and go to bed and watch Strange New Worlds or Secret Invasion or whatever terrible thing is on TV right now. And then I'll sit there and I'll chat with Brian at night while I'm watching it, and then I'll ask him, "What's up with this? Why is this so terrible?" And then we just have kind of a good little time.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. But yeah, Star Trek. I was really hopeful for this season because I actually, for the most part, kind of enjoyed season 1. But season 2, I feel like they just kind of dropped the baton. You know what I mean? It just they regressed. They went back to, almost Discovery level incompetence. It's very strange. We have a captain that's not on the show, and when he is on the show, he's hanging out in his kitchen chopping celery. It's odd. I wish I was able to elaborate more, like Rob and Dave are doing down here, because listening to you guys is fascinating. But me, as just an old-timey Star Trek guy, I watch this and I don't get it. I don't understand what they're doing. They're absolutely just deconstructing the things that we love, and it's very frustrating. And it's to the point now where I kind of don't care anymore about these shows. I want new stuff. I find myself watching things that like Foundation that I don't know if I'm supposed to like, but at least it's something new and different to me. You know what I mean?
Not if you read the books, though. If you read the books, it's horrible.
I totally get that. But I'm not a book reader. But at least
envy you.
At least it's more science fiction-y than anything else on TV.
It is science fiction.
And I'm kind of enjoying that. But I watch shows that I should enjoy, like Star Trek or anything made with the Lucasfilm logo attached to it, and I just get mad now. And I'm tired of feeling mad at our entertainment offerings these days. It's very frustrating. So yeah, and I don't miss doing a hour-long review of the show every week. I don't miss it at all. I'll let Brian do that over there on his channel.
Oh my God, I'm having the same problem. Like I'm looking at my live stream. We have a 5-hour live stream every damn Thursday, and half of it is the Strange New Worlds. I'm looking at my podcast numbers just plummet because no one wants to sit there and listen to a Strange New Worlds 2-hour fucking review. So Shay and I were like, let's not do the ups and downs anymore. Let's just do the regular review and we'll do it quicker. Dude, it's not quicker. There's no ups and downs. It's still like an hour and a half.
It's why
honestly,
I appreciate guys like Robert and Dave, these guys that are like passionate. And Robert, I know Star Trek is in your DNA, man, and you are so passionate about this stuff. And there's people out there like me that just appreciate and love you for that passion. It's amazing listening to you go down your rabbit holes. I'm serious, man. It's just I wish I had enough the knowledge that you do.
Well,
to be able to explain this Star Trek and what's wrong with it to people.
I think what's hard to get people to understand is I literally grew up with Star Trek. I discovered it as a 5-year-old. Then the animated series came along.
Right.
I watched, then you had the photo novels and the Franz Joseph technical manuals. So Star Trek was always evolving. Then in 79, there was Star Trek the Motion Picture, which, like Dave Cullen, it's my favorite Star Trek movie. It always was my favorite Star Trek movie. And by the way, it feels more like the original series than any other Star Trek movie does. It's just, it only feels like certain kinds of original Star Trek episodes, like Doomsday Machine, Immunity Syndrome, the very serious, more cosmic oriented episodes. And then we had the movies, and then Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. So throughout my life, as I grew up, Star Trek was growing, evolving. Voyager was when for me, it was the first Star Trek misstep, in that it was a copy of a copy of a copy. Whereas they didn't embrace their premise. What happens when you've gone to the new world? Like in Hunt for Red October, when Sean Connery's talking about when Cortez went to the new world, he burned his ships. That way he saw his men were properly motivated, and that's what happened to the Voyager. And the idea they thought it was going to come home was a mistake. It would have been more interesting if they resolved themselves to their fate and said, okay, we're now a Federation beachhead in the Delta Quadrant. How do we build a coalition in a place that has none? And that would have been an interesting. Of course, they couldn't do that. They were too afraid. I understand why. But Voyager then started to get lesser, and then Enterprise hit and miss. There's a lot of good stuff in Enterprise when you go back and watch it. But so to me, Star Trek really began its decline with Voyager, even though there's a lot of good in Voyager. But it really started.
Best episode of all time, Threshold.
Oh God,
yeah, Threshold.
But
guys,
I
want to start wrapping up this talk and throw this to Odin. Odin, we have case after case of these studios, Disney, Paramount, Warner Brothers. Like basically, they're hurting for money. They've overspent. They're not getting the return. Disney has had a series of flops, and they're pulling these austerity measures. How do you think the missteps of these studios financially is going to affect these beloved franchise like Star Trek?
I mean, ultimately, I think we've kind of already seen the impact when it comes to some of the reactions that we've seen either today and also in days past. For instance, when we bring up Star Wars now, the amount of people who just will say simply, I don't care, or I just don't care anymore. It's, I think, gotten to the point where they've created such apathy for these franchises that it really is nothing but a negative for the IP, for, of course, the fans, because there's nothing worse than apathy, right? If you at least have someone who's happy or even angry or sad or whatever it might be, there's at least an emotion there. But when someone's apathetic and has no emotion to it whatsoever, you really can't go much, really can't go anywhere from that, because some people can get so deeply caught in that apathetic mindset where even if you were to provide something somewhat good, right? We've always seen this a little bit with Star Wars, right? I know that, Mr. Kadish, I know that you were a big fan of Andor, right? And, but for me, I watched it and I was like, this is boring. And I just have gotten to the point where I just don't care to even invest the time to find out if it even will become worth the time in the end, right? And so it's really bad for the IPs and all that it's doing. And whether Disney decides to sell off some of these IPs or, whatever they decide to do, it would be much better for them to let someone else give a shot at it, get a shot at it versus continuing to do the same thing, because all they're going to do is just continue to turn more and more people off and create more and more apathetic mindsets.
I find it even more frustrating when there's people out there that can make good Star Trek and take these shows that we love and do them properly, like they did with Picard season 3. And I think that's what's so frustrating is we went from that, which everybody loved across the board, to season 2 of Strange New Worlds. It's just, I don't know if that's making it more obvious, the flaws there, or if I You know what I'm saying? It's very strange.
Well, if you look at the first 2 seasons of Picard, that was really Akiva Goldsman, right? And then the second season of Strange New World, that's Akiva Goldsman as well. So the Oscar winner Akiva Goldsman is the thread that's connecting all these terrible Star Treks
Oscar
together.
winner Akiva Goldsman.
Yeah.
Well, isn't this really the big issue? I mean, personnel changes have been key, and the reason why season 3 of Picard was as good as it was chiefly because Terry Matalas was primarily in the driver's seat there. And, you know, it's not that we talk about would Paramount sell it on, should they, who would buy it? I was thinking theoretically maybe HBO might be better rather than, please God, it never goes to Disney. But I was thinking, you know, Paramount is more than capable of producing really good product. I mean, it's like, so you've got Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, which I think was maybe a little hard on recently, but it's a good film. And, you know, and Top Gun Maverick. So when the people are there, when the money is there, when you put good storytellers in place, they're more than capable of producing something that people want to see. There's no reason why we can't have the Star Trek franchise reinvigorated, you know, and to the point there about canon and everything that somebody mentioned earlier. I've never agreed with the idea, okay, we're doing this multiverse thing now and everything's in its own universe because that's sort of the popular thing. And that's why we're sort of headcanoning our way around why Star Trek is so different to the way it was before. But you cannot reboot Star Trek. When they did this in 2009, I was thinking, no. Star Trek is a chronology. It has dates and times and places and events, and it has a history, and it's set in stone, and you can't alter that. Okay, there's time travel and stuff like that and whatever, but it all still plays within the same core like identity, its look and feel, everything. They've tried very much to keep it consistent for how many 30, 40 years until 2009. When for whatever reason, I don't know whether the 20% different thing came in and they had to bring in this new rule about how the franchise was supposed to look, and the ships change and the uniforms change and all this sort of stuff. The only way I see it improving is if somebody came in there and just said, right, we're going all the way back to Enterprise, and we're just drawing a line, and I said it before, we're gonna say that everything before 2009 is canon. And then you've got Kelvin, and then you've got Prime, which they're trying to convince us that Prime is canon, but it's not. And that's the only way. You just draw these 3 categories. You say this is what Discovery, Strange New Worlds, Picard. This is all Prime. You throw in Prodigy, the other cartoon show. I can't remember what's Lower Decks.
Lower Decks.
Right. Everything else from 1966 to 2005. That's where we're working within. If someone does this, that's the only way I can come back to the franchise with the same. It's because, you know, season 3 of Picard feels like a long time ago, and it was the only time since 2005 that I actually felt in love with Star Trek again, albeit very briefly.
Me too.
I mean, they did sort of do that, though.
Half-assed it. Like they've never been very clear on like what timelines they're using.
Right, it was half-assed. But
I want to give a shout out to Whiskey Jack for his member chat. Top tier discussion, folks. With R&B, sci-fi was supposed to be the smart genre. It's tipping the opposite way these days. And we got a couple of super chats we need to get to real quick. Basically, we've got T Stoney for $10. Angel Studios doing great with in-house production. The Chosen Great Show. I think we might have already hit this one. Gavin Blackburn, interesting to see what OTOY could do with Trek. I don't know what OTOY is, but yeah, it'd be interesting.
That's the Roddenberry archive.
Otoy,
okay.
Yeah.
Otoy, yeah, they did that great short with Spock at the grave site of Kirk. 1864 Kev for $5. Hello, guys. I grew up with Star Trek, and yes, it has changed, but not for the good. Discovery was its death knell. Kind of agree with that. Discovery is miserable. Rec Films Montana for $10. I was doing special edited versions of Strange New World Season 2, taking out annoying stuff like burps, make it go stuff. But it got to a point I could not edit enough. With Movie Picard Season 3, edit I could, but not with Strange New Worlds Season 2. So you can't even re-edit Strange New World Season 2 to be good. That's interesting.
Wow.
Kevin Dorr for $5. If anybody wants to see a movie about the development of the A-bomb, watch Fat Man and Little Boy. Much better insight about the A-bomb than Oppenheimer movie. Interesting. Check that out. 200 Watt Studios for $10. Recent Strange New World episodes had the crew showing Spock how to act Vulcan. You think that would have flown Roddenberry's Trek? What if Sidney Poitier was being taught how to act black?
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dang.
Very hardcore. They have been pretty disrespectful to Spock this
They
season.
call me Mr. Spock.
Mr. Spock.
All right, guys. I have one more topic that I want to touch on before we get out of here. And that is this story that was actually sent to me by Peter Pischke over on Twitter. And it's basically a story about how most entertainment news sites are on their way to basically dying out. And this was an interview that Clownfish TV did with the CEO, former CEO and founder of Cinema Blend and current CEO of Giant Robot. And I don't know how many of you guys actually bothered to read through this thing, but it was actually kind of like an interesting interview where, you know, Giant Frickin' Robot's not exactly the bastion of
Nope.
journalistic integrity that this guy makes it out to be. But he basically said that the reason that a lot of these sites are kind of like shutting down or like look to be going out of business come 2024 is that it's not because they've gone woke. It's not because their stories are bad or written by AI or whatever. It's because the major tech platforms like Facebook and Google are throttling traffic to these sites, where basically these sites used to get most of their traffic from sharing news stories on Google, Facebook, Twitter, stuff like that. And Google and Facebook have taken steps to kind of try to keep everything in-house, which makes it hard for a lot of these big sites and even independent sites to actually get the eyeballs they need to make ad revenue and all this other stuff. And so basically, most news sites are going to be broke by mid-2024, according to this guy, Josh Tyler, who was the founder of Cinema Blend and Giant Frickin' Robot. And I just thought it was interesting. Basically, Robert, you know, a lot of these sites kind of like trade off of rage bait, clickbait, stuff like that, unfounded rumors. And the idea that they're going to be out of business by mid next year is kind of interesting to me, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, I grew up reading the entertainment press, like Variety and Hollywood Reporter. I lived on that stuff, and a lot of this entertainment reporting has obviously moved over to the internet, where unfortunately with all news, you get a lot more analysis. You have people like what we're doing right now, having 2-hour-long discussions, delving really into issues. But I think the real problem is that entertainment news just isn't, we don't have celebrities anymore, not like we used to. Mm-hmm. So celebrity news has sort of died on the vine. You know, everybody who's marrying who, who's dating whom. I mean, there's a little bit of that, but a lot of that is just, when you can talk to your favorite celebrity on Twitter or read, it's all of the mystique has gone away. We know too much about everything these days. So where is the value in entertainment news reporting across the board? There's no, I mean, we pay attention to it, but most people, there's no reason to anymore. You know, movie stars used to be sort of American royalty, and all of that has fallen by the wayside. We don't even have, like, who are our movie stars under 35?
Yeah, so I blame social media for that.
Well, yeah, but
they used to be prepackaged products that the studios sold to us, basically. So we saw them as movie stars, and now, you know, they're not packaged anymore. We have too much access to them.
Yeah, and also the entertainment itself is fractured. It used to be that everybody, look, occasionally we'll have a Barbenheimer thing happen, but for the most part, between everybody doing different things and liking different things, I mean, name the top 5 rock acts in the world today.
Oh, no, that's not.
I mean, 10 years ago you could, 20 years ago certainly, 30 years ago, all of our entertainment is so fractured that entertainment news doesn't have one focus anymore that everybody wants to know about. And I think it was sort of an inevitable evolution of where we are culturally. But entertainment news used to rely on that desire to know about celebrities in any, whether it was movies, TV, rock and roll, whatever. We don't have any of that anymore.
Well, now that the mainstream entertainment news or media, it's very obvious that they're not really fans. They don't really have the passion and the knowledge that a basic YouTuber can have. And so when you can go get a much better, maybe not highly as produced as, but a much better opinion from someone who's actually passionate about what they're talking about, versus some guy who's reading off a teleprompter, it's just, there's no comparison, which is probably why YouTube is doing better.
There's no such thing as mainstream media anymore. I don't see it. When I do go through and let the TV, I don't stop on any of them, and then I end up turning the TV off. What I do is like everybody else. I come over to YouTube, or I hit that app, and I watch shows like what we're doing, or I watch the podcast, or I watch, Robert or Dave or Odin or any of the other multiple people out there on YouTube that do their own entertaining shows and spin on things. It's a very just the entertainment world is shifting,
Totally.
And especially now with the strikes going on, they better be careful, or they're not going to have anybody to entertain when they get done with all this stuff, because they're all going to be watching our shows, because
right.
you know what I mean. It's just it's a very strange world now. It's like you were saying, I couldn't tell you anybody in the top 10 music charts right now. Growing up, I could have told you every week. We had Dick Clark, we had Casey Kasem's top 40, we had American Bandstand, we had all that kind of stuff. That was where you went to see what was cool. You know what I mean? I couldn't tell you.
MTV's 120 minutes.
Yeah, Headbangers Ball. That was my jam. That kind of stuff. But that stuff doesn't exist now.
During the pandemic, there's I don't know if you guys know this channel. It's on YouTube. The Professor of Rock. He was a Midwestern music journalist. He started his YouTube channel. Always had good production. Always had some decent money behind him. But when he started, he had very few subscribers. Mm-hmm. Now he interviews. It's a fantastic channel. I used to religiously read like Spin and Rolling Stone magazine, which are almost unreadable now. Rolling Stone, especially. The Professor of Rock interviews everybody you'd ever want to hear from. Long sit-down interviews. He brings his vast knowledge. And I look at channels like this. Here was a guy who was an impassioned music lover, music journalist, and now he has his own YouTube channel. He's bringing all of that institutional knowledge as a fan that he got himself. And now he's sitting down and interviewing all of the significant people that were part of your favorite music growing up.
Yeah.
And it's like, for a long period of time, like he'll sit down for an hour and do an interview. That's where, why am I going to read some music rag about rock and roll when I can sit down and watch the Professor of Rock, somebody who's got it in his bones, on YouTube for free?
If you had told me 20 years ago that I was going to be on our little podcast, and I was going to be in a conversation interviewing Rodney McKay and Colonel Shepard from Stargate Atlantis, I would have told you you're out of your mind. That's
right,
not going to happen. And that's exactly what we do. We've done.
I felt that way about Daniel Davis when he was on our
wild.
show. I lost my mind.
So,
I want to throw this to Odin, because Odin, I think one of the biggest issues with entertainment news sites as they stand now is nobody freaking believes them. Right? There's so much fake news. There's so much political spin. There's so much they want to be ingratiated to the studios so that they can get access to like premieres and swag and stuff like that. That nobody puts too much faith in what they say. Like, I kind of joked with Brian that giant freaking robot. You go there to get fake news about the entertainment industry for the most part, because
it's a great website if you don't know anything. You're like, they're making a new this, and this is pretty.
Yeah. Is that where Grace Randolph gets her scoops from?
It must be
probably. Yeah. But Odin, there is a big credibility problem with modern day entertainment sites, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why I was going to add to the discussion, saying I think the two major issues that have really caused the downfall, especially of these social commentary or cultural commentary channels and websites, are two things. One, the injection of politics. This kind of goes into what we said before. Now we have so much access to everybody. Beforehand, the only time you would ever really hear about somebody is when they were selling their movie or when they were selling their show, right? The interviews that they would do. And typically those interviews would stay on point, right? They would stay focused on that. But now that we have access to everything, well, now not only the people delving into things that are not their show and not the content that people typically want to hear from them about, but now it's also their individual politics. And so the trades and all these other places start to pick up with that too and start to run with that as well. So I think the injection of politics has been a huge portion and huge part of that. But then also kind of going back to what you said too, authenticity is also the major thing, right? People are drawn to those that they honestly believe are authentic, the ones that they think are not only just telling them the truth, but also that they have some idea of what they're talking about. And what we found especially is there's been a huge rise of people who have been gaining in authenticity because they're just more real, right? Nowadays, there's almost a difference between people who are just seem a lot more real, down to earth, understanding all the things going on, and then those that are in like the ivory tower of whether it's called mainstream media or legacy media. And so I think that separation has really caused also this rift, which is leading to a lot of these companies that are, I totally believe that when he says in that article that they're going to be going out of business, because I think you've already seen a lot of media companies going out of business in the political sphere. And I would not be surprised if culturally you see something very similar too.
Yeah. And Dave, that brings us to this idea that real news sites hire staff, they go out, they chase down stories, they try to find stuff that's like trending and breaking and things like that. Whereas shows like ours, like we're just commenting on stuff that's already in the news. So the legitimacy of a lot of these entertainment news sites is what this article that I was referencing was about. But do we really need stuff like that nowadays? Like we can, like, there's so many YouTubers out there who have sources that these articles kind of like tap into. And most of these articles are basically quoting stuff that's already coming from independent YouTubers and stuff like that. So you have this independent journalism aspect, which in a lot of ways is much fairer and more legitimate than a lot of these like quote unquote mainstream sites. So what's your take on this?
Yeah, well, I used to be a tech journalist, and I remember many moons ago being invited to a conference by a company who had only just the previous year, they didn't want to invite any YouTubers. This is going back maybe 6-7 years ago. And that particular year in question, they decided, no, we're opening up now to these, because they realized the value of the YouTube influencer or whatever, which is a term I don't like, to be perfectly honest, influencer. But I'm really glad that YouTube commentary, YouTubers in general, endured 2017, particularly I think it was March 2017, because it was a particularly dark time for content creators on making use of the AdSense network. I mean, we can talk about the demonetization thing, unfortunately, that Brian and Shane have endured, I think, unfairly recently. But this adpocalypse that happened, I honestly believe, at the time I believed it more strongly even now, was designed to try to disrupt this new economic model that had emerged from technologies like social media, whereby it was possible for content creators like ourselves to make a living, to make this content, because obviously if you're doing something professionally, you're going to, number one, you're going to do more of it. Number two, you're going to do it better. And I think there was a real sense, particularly after that election as well, that the mainstream media had been discredited. And I suppose this is now we're seeing it. We saw it with the news media. Now we're seeing it with the entertainment media, but it's much the same thing. That we're seeing the same biases there that maybe weren't quite so evident a number of years ago. And so it's shifting. It just simply wasn't possible for people such as ourselves to sit around and do something. Well, you could do it, but there wasn't any kind of financial incentive. And now there is. And I think that has completely shifted. I wouldn't say necessarily the balance of power. The same corporations are still ultimately in charge. But from an entertainment perspective, people are seeking things. They're seeking their content elsewhere. They want these deep dives. And I think as well, for the particular genre that we operate in, I've always thought that, with science fiction, entertainment, and pop culture, It is an audience. The best people who are writing it, they're dreamers. The audience are dreamers. People want to engage with people who think like they do, and they want to think deeply about these things. And we spend a lot of time with this, and so people are getting that from us.
Yeah,
Brian,
I said the same thing, by the way, about I said this exactly back when the adpocalypse happened. It happened coincidentally because a mainstream journalist didn't like what Steven Crowder said, and it was all this big straw man thing that sort of sparked that catalyst. That was a catalyst for that, and I just find it really odd that it was the mainstream that sparked the catalyst for disrupting the financial flow to the competition.
But wasn't it PewDiePie and Wall Street Journal?
That was afterwards, which added to it. I love that, by the way. PewDiePie said, "You take a shot at the king, you best not miss," because they failed when they tried to take out PewDiePie.
Yeah.
Brian, real quick, just to wrap things up here, you and Shane actually tried launching like your own kind of like news site, and you got to see firsthand how difficult it is.
So hard.
And compared to a site like Giant Freaking Robot, where it just seems like they just take whatever rumors out there from the YouTube sphere and spin like a 500-word article about it and pretend that it's coming from a reliable source. Do you really think that by the middle of next year we're going to see a lot of these sites disappear?
I do, actually. I don't, maybe not disappear. I think they'll probably some of them will probably join up. I think they'll become part of like a network or something where they'll promote their own things within each other. When we started Honest Pop Culture, that's the news site. We haven't updated in a while because it's a pain in the ass. It's a lot of work to actually write good, not regurgitated content. And we did for a while, and work got really busy, and we just have to focus on things that are going to make money. And that website's not going to make any money for a very long time. And it was hard to get ranked. I was a web designer in my past life, and I'm very good at understanding the algorithm and sort of gaming the system. And I gamed the crap out of that system for this website. And even then, the system has changed to the point where I don't know how it's actually pulling or how it's favoring these websites, but there are websites that are favored specifically, whether they're using the correct, SEO tactics, keywords, etc., or even if they're not. There can be a website that only has a headline and a link to some Variety article that is somehow being pushed up by Google. And I can't explain it. So when I realized that it would be this extreme, 2-year-long grind just to get on the map, we sort of put it on the back burner because it's such a hard thing. When it comes to these websites, I do believe that because it's harder to make money now because of Google and what they're doing. I think that you're going to see like a combination of websites. We're going to see like fandom. I think it's called fandom.com, whatever, where they sort of coalesce and they become a network of each other, and they promote their internal websites. We're going to see a return to that. We saw that back in probably the early 2000s, 2010s. There was a meta, I call it the news meta, for a while where a lot of websites were like a network of websites. And then they broke up again when Google News and Facebook News and like Reader and all these other websites, these companies came out that were better at disseminating the information. But we're going to see that again. We're going to see these websites become networks or sister sites of each other. That's what, or those shut down. One of the two.
We're going to have the Salty Popcast.
Yeah, Salty Popcast, Dave Cullen, Burnett work. You know what I mean? And not leaving Odin out, but we'll have like a YouTube union.
Unionize.
Let's not go there again. Go for a long time.
I'm going on strike already.
I knew it.
All right,
I knew it. Rob would be the scab.
All right, guys, we had a lot of stuff to talk about, and we talked about it today. And I want to thank our fantastic panel of nerds for being here and sharing all their wonderful insights. Robert Meyer Burnett, any final thoughts, and where can people find more of you?
Well, I think that I don't want to be so pessimistic. There is a lot of great stuff being created across the board. There's great books being written. There's great shows being made. There's great movies being made. And, Oppenheimer is a film that I can't believe got made. The same way I couldn't believe Dunkirk got made. And Christopher Nolan got it made. And it's a thought-provoking film about a significant point in history. And I'd suggest people go see that and ruminate over it. It's pretty good. There's still a lot of great stuff out there. You can find me on the Burnett Work, where I do try on YouTube. It's just my name, the and then Burnett Work, like a network. Come. I try and put a positive spin on most things aside from Star Trek. If you expect me to be positive about Star Trek, well, you'll see a video coming out next week called 10 and 20, where I delve into, I'm going to do a new series of, if you've never watched Star Trek before, because people are like, it's so big, where do I start? I'm doing a show where here are 10 essential episodes. It's not definitive. It's not a 10 best list. It's an overview of 10 episodes I think you should watch to have an understanding of what Star Trek is as a franchise and as an entertainment stories. So it'll give you an overview. It's a great place to start. It'll allow you to go find your own favorite episodes. It's not it's just an overview of Star Trek episodes to understand what the franchise is. And I'm doing that for all 3 seasons of Star Trek. And it's called R&B's 10 and 20. There'll be 20-minute episodes that have a list of 10 things and why you should.
That's awesome.
And by the way, all the panelists' channels are linked in the description if you guys want to go check those out. Odin, any final thoughts, and where can people find more about you?
Yeah, I guess last thought I would say is, go support Sound of Freedom. It's doing so incredibly well. It was beating, in fact, even Mission Impossible the other day at the domestic box office. So
wow,
it's been doing incredibly well here in the States. So go check it out, because again, the message is getting out there is great. And so again, shout out to the film, and shout out to Jim Caviezel as well for just the promotion he's been doing and all the hard work he's been doing to try to get the word out there about that. But you can check me out over at OMB Reviews on YouTube, Odyssey, Rumble, Twitter, etc. And I'll have a live stream tonight where we'll talk about the box office for Barbie, Oppenheimer, and all the others.
Awesome stuff over there. Dave Cullen, thank you for staying up late with us today. I appreciate you calling in from across the pond. It's great to finally have you on the show. Do you have any final thoughts, and where can people find more of your stuff?
It's not that late. It's only 8 o'clock here, so it's okay.
That's past my bedtime.
Final thoughts: don't watch Secret Invasion. Rewatch. Actually, this is what I'm doing. I've gone back now, and because I reviewed this movie Passengers, which was from 2016, and I was like, it's one of those movies, and I said I gotta find movies like this that are actually pretty decent, but sort of went under the radar and didn't make a big splash at the time. So I'd recommend people rewatch that tonight, or Oblivion, which is another film that I actually really like. I think it's
Passengers was very controversial, wasn't it?
Yeah, but only because it had just come into the woke era. A couple of years earlier, nobody would have minded.
I don't know about that. I mean, there is some questionable decision making in that movie. But it's worth checking out.
There's an edit. Someone did an edit of reworking the movie in such a way, and it would have made the character of Jim. We could talk about this, but that's the Dave Cullen Show. You can subscribe over there, and I'll see you there.
All right, fantastic. Brian from the Popcast, where can people give you money because you've been totally demonetized?
All right, so we have two channels. We have our main channel, the Prime channel / the Popcast, and
I like the different timelines from Star Trek, right?
Right,
all these different,
exactly. And I'm trying to finish this big Stargate video that we have coming out. We were able to tap into an actual source. I'm being careful what I say. And we got a lot of information on their proposed plan that is now possibly on the chopping block because of the strikes. So that video is going to come out pretty soon, probably tomorrow or Monday. We'll see. And then we have, and then our live channel, which is the Popcast Live, which has been demonetized, which is where we do our live streams. And so because we're demonetized, go to popcast.co, our website. It's our Streamlabs website. It's pretty cool. You can donate there, or you can just go there to follow us. And if you want to become a member on the Popcast, if you were a member on Unleashed channel, please become a member on the Popcast. Because even if we do get remonetized, I'm not sure if we bring those memberships back because it's we realize how dangerous it was having 2 member sections. Because now people are upset that they had members and they can't access any of the member stuff. So
yeah.
That
All right,
sucks.
Matt Vader 74.
Hi.
Any final thoughts? And what do we have going on with
Oh,
the
hey, you know
live
what?
streams?
I'm prepared this week.
Ooh,
Just,
wow.
just so you know, I wrote it down. I know what's going on. You know, I know you get annoyed when I say I don't know what's going on. But my final thoughts are: I just want to say thanks to Robert and Dave both for coming today. It's been a pleasure talking to you guys, and you know, it's. I hope you guys come back, and we can come back anytime you want. Odin, again, thanks for your weekly input. You know, taking time out of your week. You don't have to do that, and we really appreciate you. And Brian, I love you, man. You're my brother. And
You're my bro.
it's always good to talk to you. What's going on the Salty Nerd podcast? We're busy. We got a lot of stuff going on. Just yesterday, we released our roundtable discussion for the 90s classic Con Air, the Nick Cage masterpiece. So you can check that out. That was on the channel released yesterday. This coming Friday, we're also releasing another great action movie. We talked about Rambo First Blood Part 2. I think we're going to end up going through all the Rambo movies at some point over the year. But that was another fun discussion. And Thursdays, we have our weekly drop of our Warrior on HBO Max, or just Max now. As it drops, we are reviewing that channel, and that's a lot of fun. It's probably one of the best things on TV if you like Kung Fu and crazy drama. And Tuesdays at 2 o'clock, we have our weekly Saltcast IRL live stream where we sit around in the studio and talk about more stuff that doesn't matter. So that's what we got going on. So thanks everybody in the chat for being here today, and our new members, and I'm really stoked that we hit 200 thumbs ups. That was really cool. 236 right now. So
Yeah,
Awesome.
and we had at our height, we had about 450 people watching the live stream, which is
Really good.
fantastic. We just hit 14,000 subscribers on the Salty Nerd Podcast channel, so thank you all for that.
Very
and I want
cool.
to give a big shout out to everyone who gave us super chats today: Gavin Blackburn, Mexican Iron Man, JT Gunn, the Joker's Voice, the Dork Knight, Bob Dorsey, Sidebook VR, T Stoney, 1864 Kev, Rec Films Montana, Kevin Dorr, and 200 Watt Studio. Thank you all so much for the support. We really appreciate it. And also wanted to just say thank you all in the chat, and thank you to everyone who became members during the live stream. We really appreciate the support. And tune in next week, same salty time, same salty channel, for more nonsense as we talk about all types of fun stuff with new guests and new panelists. Robert Meyer Burnett and Dave Cullen, thank you so much for being on the show. It's fantastic to have you here. Hope you come back sometime soon. And to everyone else, stay salty, my friends.